And I think a strong candidate is imagination, our capacity to detach ourselves from the here and now, anticipate the future, recollect the past, enter the virtual worlds created by artists and the worlds revealed by science. So I'm with the anthropologist Robin Dunbar when he writes, what sets us apart is a life in the mind, the ability to imagine. And on that background, you can imagine that my interest was piqued when about 20 years ago I was handed this referral letter of a patient who had lost the ability to imagine anything. He notes this particularly at night, when he's never been a good sleeper and previously used to imagine things to help himself get to sleep, but now finds he's unable to do so. He can't picture his children or his grandchildren, whereas previously he had been able to. Please see and advise. And this was a symptom I thought was very fascinating, one that I've not come across before in my practice as a neurologist. We're going to come back in a moment to MX and the story of the work that we did with him and the research to which that work subsequently led. But I'm going to introduce you first in a moment to a visualization exercise to get you in the groove. That will occupy the first part of the talk, and then in the second part, I'll turn from the topic of visualization to the rather broader topic of imagination and its prerequisites, particularly in the brain. So let's start with visualization. Now I'd like you to, either with your eyes open or your eyes closed, whichever you prefer, visualize a rising sun and consider carefully the picture that comes before your mind's eye. Now imagine the sun rising above the horizon into a hazy sky. The sky clears and surrounds the sun with blueness. Some clouds appear. A storm blows up. There are flashes of lightning. And finally, a rainbow appears. Now, this is very rough and ready, but I'd like you to rate the vividness of the images that you formed. And I think we can do this without our eyes closed. I'd like anyone who thinks that their image was perfectly clear and vivid, as we'll see in our approaching that, to put up their hand. Okay, so a few hands are going up, just a few, as I'd expect. Clear and reasonably vivid? Okay, a larger number. Moderately clear and lively. Vague and dim. No image at all, you only know that you're thinking. Okay, excellent. So, a very wide distribution, as I'd expect. The majority are somewhere in the middle, but there are a few people right out at the extremes of this interesting distribution. So this is a capacity which varies quite widely, and we'll explore what that may mean. When do we engage imagery, those of us who have it? So typically when we recollect, so if you imagine last year's holiday, it's quite likely that a visual image will come to mind if you have imagery. If you read a novel, it's likely that a descriptive passage will bring an image to mind. So people often say when they go to see the film of the book that a character wasn't at all as they'd imagined him or her, proving that they formed a visual image while reading. Many of us, while we daydream, form visual images. We certainly have very vivid visual imagery, typically when we dream at night. And creative people often describe using imagery in their creative work, for example, Einstein. Imagery has been described as an emotional amplifier. So if you are, for example, craving that bar of chocolate or the next drink, it's quite likely that you will visualize it, and that visualization will then intensify your craving. So it can have an adverse effect on our mental lives, but it's also used often by psychologists in therapy, and can, in that way, be psychologically beneficial. It's harnessed in mental practice. So surgeons, for example, often describe rehearsing their images, rehearsing their operations with the help of mental imagery, and reflecting on their operations, more or less successful, also using visual recollection of what happened at the time. And there's evidence that indeed surgeons can improve their practice in that way. There was some fascinating work now 15 years or so ago by Adrian Owen, showing that it's possible to detect the signatures of imagination in the brains of some people who appear to be in a vegetative state. Important work which led to the realization that around 5 to 10% of people in a vegetative state are in fact not. And those who show those signatures of imagery in the brain tends to become more overtly conscious over the following months. Studies using what's called descriptive experience sampling, by which a buzzer goes off in your pocket and you have to report there and then what's passing through your mind, show remarkably that visual imagery is actually the commonest mental content, even more common than sensory awareness of your immediate surroundings. So what is going on in us when we visualize? Well, much of the talk will bear on this, but imagery has been described as weak vision, weak perception. And one very nice illustration of this is to be found in this experiment, which I wish I'd done, but I didn't. If you look at the sun, your pupils constrict, of course. If you imagine looking at the sun, your pupils will constrict. If you imagine looking into a dark room, your pupils will slightly dilate. Let's look into the brain. I'm going to show you quite a number of images of this kind from functional brain imaging. So I better explain the basis of this technique very briefly. It's really, in a way, quite simple. It relies on the principle that brain is like a muscle. So when we exercise a muscle, blood flow to the muscle increases. Similarly, when we use a part of the brain for a particular purpose, for example, to look at faces, blood flow to regions involved in looking at the